The wind rustled through the curtains of the old watchtower, whispering secrets into the forgotten corners of the dusty room. Sunlight spilled through a crack in the stone wall, casting a golden stripe across the wooden floor, where a strange object stood tall and proud, a mirror, framed in silver vines that shimmered even in shadow. It did not look dusty like the rest of the room. Its glass gleamed as though freshly polished, and its frame sparkled like moonlight on water. Every morning, birds flew past the tower without a glance, but this morning, a raven paused mid-flight. It hovered outside the arched window, cawed once, then darted away into the clouds. Down below, the forest rustled with stories untold, while the village children played tag between the trees, never daring to step near the stone path that led to the tower. No one remembered who had built it, or why it was forbidden, only that the grown-ups always said, "Stay away from the mirror tower." But things were about to change. Deep inside the woods, a girl named Lynette chased her little brother Bram through the thicket, laughing as twigs snapped beneath their feet. They'd wandered farther than usual, chasing the last golden butterfly of summer. It fluttered past the mossy trees and disappeared through a gap in a stone wall. Bram pushed through first, vanishing from sight. Lynette froze. The air suddenly felt colder. The trees no longer whispered playfully but stood silent like statues. Then she saw it. The tower. Its top reached above the tallest pine, and its stones shimmered as though dipped in silver dust. The mirror inside waited, silent and still, for the children had come, and its lies were ready to be told. Lynette hesitated at the edge of the clearing. The trees behind her seemed to sigh, as if urging her back, but Bram had already vanished beyond the vine-draped doorway of the tower. She called out softly, her voice catching in the stillness, but there was no answer. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, brushing past ivy and stone. The air inside the tower was cool and quiet, holding a kind of waiting silence. Dust drifted in shafts of sunlight, and the scent of time-old wood, dried leaves, and something faintly sweet filled her nose. Her footsteps echoed softly as she climbed the winding staircase, each step creaking under her weight. At the top, the room opened into a round chamber. There, standing alone against the far wall, was the mirror. It was even more beautiful up close. The silver frame curled like vines around shimmering glass, and in its reflection, everything looked sharper, cleaner, even magical. And there was Bram, standing right before it, staring into its gleaming surface. Lynette's heart beat faster. She reached out to grab his hand, but stopped. Bram was smiling, not at her, but at the mirror. He looked so happy. Curious and cautious, Lynette approached. Her reflection appeared beside her brother's, but something was off. Her hair in the mirror gleamed gold, not chestnut brown. Her eyes sparkled like emeralds. Instead of their usual soft gray, she looked perfect. Too perfect. A strange warmth spread in her chest. Was this what she really looked like? Had no one ever noticed before? Bram tugged at her sleeve, pointing at the glass with wide eyes. Then, without a word, he turned and ran back down the stairs. Lynette followed quickly, calling after him, but Bram didn't stop. Out of the tower he went, past the stone gate and back toward the village, a strange brightness in his eyes. That night, Lynette lay awake in bed. Bram had barely spoken after they returned home. He kept glancing in mirrors, even small ones, smiling to himself. And when their mother asked why they were late, he simply said, "I found something that tells the truth." End of 4. The next morning, Lynette returned alone to the tower. The mirror greeted her with a shimmer. This time, the reflection showed her holding a book with golden pages. Her voice rang out in the air, a crowd clapping, people smiling, calling her a brilliant storyteller. The mirror showed Lynette not as she was, but as she wanted to be. She couldn't look away. Each day after that, Lynette returned. She began to believe the mirror's visions. In its glass, she was admired, clever, adored. People listened to her, respected her, cheered for her, and slowly, her heart began to change. At school, she snapped at her friends. When Bram asked to play, she rolled her eyes. She spent hours brushing her hair, trying to match the mirror's version. She spoke louder, boasted more, laughed at others instead of with them. But no one applauded, no one cheered. The more she acted like the girl in the mirror, the more people drifted away. Even Bram had stopped visiting the tower. He no longer smiled at the glass. He had grown quiet, withdrawn. One gray afternoon, Lynette arrived at the tower to find someone already inside. It was Bram. But he wasn't looking into the mirror. He had his back to it, arms crossed, eyes full of worry. Lynette entered slowly, uncertain. The mirror shimmered again, this time showing Lynette in a dazzling gown, a golden crown on her head, but her face looked proud and cold, her eyes empty. Bram's voice broke the silence. He didn't look at her, only at the floor, where a small crack had appeared, a thin line running from the mirror's base to the wall. He said the mirror lied. It made him think he was a hero, brave and strong, but when he tried to prove it by climbing the tallest tree in the woods, he'd fallen. He showed Lynette the scrape on his arm, hidden beneath his sleeve. He whispered that he was scared, but the mirror had made him believe he couldn't be. He said the mirror wanted something. It showed what you wanted most, then made you chase it no matter who got hurt. Lynette didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the glass. The mirror shimmered again, brighter now. The tower felt warmer, closer, as if it breathed around her. The reflection showed Bram now running from her, afraid. Lynette blinked. Her chest tightened. Then she saw her parents in the mirror shaking their heads, disappointed, friends turning away, the school playground empty. She stepped back. The mirror flashed once more, bright as lightning, and then all went dark. When Lynette opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor. The room was quiet again. Bram sat beside her, holding her hand. He told her the mirror had gone silent. It no longer shimmered. Its light had faded. Lynette sat up slowly. Her head ached, but her heart ached more. She turned toward the mirror. This time, the reflection showed only the two of them as they truly were. Tired, worried, together. Bram whispered that maybe the mirror only lied when you stopped telling the truth to yourself. Lynette looked into her own eyes, not the glittering emerald ones from before, but her real soft gray. She saw them clearly for the first time in days. The wind whispered through the tower once more, but it no longer sounded like secrets. It sounded like a song, distant, gentle, and free. Lynette stood, brushed off her skirt, and took Bram's hand. They left the tower behind. But something had changed. And not just in the mirror. The days that followed were quiet, but strange. Lynette no longer returned to the tower, not because she was afraid, but because something in her heart had grown heavy, like the feeling after waking from a too-sweet dream and realizing it wasn't real. She played with Bram more, helped her mother sweep the kitchen, and even apologized to her classmates when she noticed the shadows her sharp words had left behind. But inside, the mirror's whispers still lingered. At night, she dreamt of golden books, cheering crowds, and eyes that sparkled with admiration. When she passed windows or shiny doorknobs, she caught herself peeking, hoping for a glimpse of the dazzling girl the mirror had shown her. And each time, she saw only herself, plain, quiet, and unsure. She told no one, not even Bram, that the ache in her chest hadn't gone away. Then, 3 nights later, a wind unlike any before swept through the village. It howled over the rooftops, rattled the shutters, and bent the tallest trees. Animals grew restless, and even the stars seemed to blink faster, as if warning the world below. Lynette woke suddenly, heart racing. She crept to her window. Far beyond the treetops, the tower shimmered not with moonlight, but with its own strange glow, a pale blue pulse, soft and steady, like the heartbeat of something waking. Bram appeared at her door, clutching a blanket. He'd seen it too. They knew. The mirror had not been finished with them. By morning, the village was buzzing. Chickens refused to leave their coops. Children cried for no reason. The baker's bread wouldn't rise. The world felt off. Lynette and Bram slipped away during the midday lull, when grown-ups were too busy muttering and stirring soup to notice. The path to the tower seemed different now. The trees darker, the wind sharper, and the stones underfoot colder. As they neared the gate, they found the ivy shriveled and blackened. The silver dust on the tower's stones now shimmered like frost. And inside, the mirror waited. Its glass glowed blue, flickering like a candle caught in a storm. Cracks had spread further from the base, winding like spiderwebs across the frame. But the mirror stood tall, pulsing, alive. As soon as Lynette stepped into the room, the door slammed shut behind them. The air grew thick, humming with a sound neither music nor voice, something between a sigh and a whisper, calling her name. The mirror flashed. Suddenly, the room vanished. Lynette found herself in a place she could not name, a vast space of swirling color and mist. Floating images circled her. A stage, a golden crown, applause, children pointing at her with wide eyes of awe, her parents lifting her into the air, proud and smiling. But it wasn't real. None of it was. She tried to turn, to walk away, but her feet wouldn't move. The mirror's voice, though it had no sound, tugged at her thoughts. You can be more. You can be everything. Then, without warning, the images turned. The children laughed at her, not with joy, but mockery. The stage vanished beneath her feet. Her parents disappeared into smoke. The golden crown melted in her hands. Lynette cried out, and suddenly she saw herself, the mirror version, standing ahead of her, the perfect girl, with golden hair and emerald eyes. The girl who always had the right words, who never failed, who was always loved. The girl stepped closer. Her lips did not move, but her eyes spoke. You were nothing before me. Do you really want to go back? Lynette's breath caught. Her knees shook. Behind her, a flicker of light appeared, small, warm, and familiar. Bram. He stood at the edge of the mist, arms open, his real, ordinary self. No magic, no illusions. She remembered how he'd held her hand when she'd fallen from a tree last summer, how he'd laughed at her silly jokes, even when no one else did, how he'd cried the day their cat went missing, and how she had held him close. Those moments hadn't come from a mirror. They had come from love. Lynette turned back to the glowing girl. Her perfect double raised a hand, offering a golden crown. Lynette stepped closer, then stopped. She looked into the girl's eyes and saw something new. Fear. The mirror didn't want her to leave. It fed on dreams, hopes, and the pieces of a person they weren't proud of. It twisted wishes into chains. Lynette lowered her eyes and whispered something only her heart could hear. No more Lees. She stepped toward Bram. The mist began to shudder and swirl. The images cracked like glass struck by stone. The glowing girl screamed, a soundless burst of rage, and shattered into 1,000 specks of light. The mist fell away. Lynette was back in the tower. The mirror cracked from top to bottom, its glow fading to gray. Bram rushed forward, wrapping his arms around her. The tower trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. They didn't wait. Hand in hand, they raced down the winding stairs, past crumbling stones and flickering shadows. As they burst through the front door, the tower gave a final groan and began to collapse inward, stone folding upon stone like a melting candle. By the time they reached the tree line, the mirror tower was no more. Only a silver mist hung in the air where it had stood. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Birdsong returned slowly. The forest brightened. The wind softened. Lynette sat beneath a tree, heart pounding. Her hands trembled, but she smiled. She had chosen truth. Not the kind found in glass and glitter, but the kind found in kindness, in mistakes, in small, quiet bravery. She was not perfect, and she never wanted to be. The sun peeked out from behind the clouds as Lynette and Bram stepped back into the village, their clothes dusty and their faces streaked with dirt. No one noticed at first. The market was quiet, the wind calm, the sky a gentle blue. The strangeness that had gripped the village for days had faded like a bad dream at morning light. But Lynette noticed something different, not around her, but inside. The tug in her chest, the hollow space that had longed for applause and sparkle, had quieted. It wasn't gone, not completely, but it no longer whispered like the mirror had. It no longer needed to be filled with shiny things. It waited instead, patient and still, like the earth before spring. That night, after their mother kissed them goodnight and closed the door gently behind her, Lynette sat up in bed. Bram lay beside her, his breath soft and steady. The moon cast a silver stripe across the wooden floor, and for a moment, she thought of the mirror's glow. But she didn't miss it. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small notebook. Its cover was plain brown, the corners a little bent, and inside were only blank pages. She picked up her pencil and began to write. Not about golden books or glittering stages, but about a tower and a mirror that lied, and a brother who had held her hand when everything seemed to fall apart. She wrote of how the truth was not always bright or easy, but it was real. She wrote until her eyes drooped and the words blurred. When she woke the next morning, Bram was already up, watching birds from the window. Lynette handed him the notebook and waited. He read slowly, his lips moving without sound. Then, he looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need any mirror to feel magical. That day at school, Lynette noticed things she hadn't seen before. Jessa, the quiet girl who always sat alone, had painted a tiny flower on her pencil case. Toby, who stuttered when nervous, was building a tower of sticks at recess, carefully placing one after another. Even Bram, younger and smaller, had helped the art teacher carry boxes without being asked. None of it was shiny. None of it would be in a mirror. But all of it was real. And so she began to listen more. She told Jessa her flower was beautiful. She asked Toby what he was building. She cheered when Bram raced across the playground. And slowly, like petals opening under sunlight, her world began to bloom. One afternoon, Lynette stood at the village square, watching the wind dance through the leaves. The baker's daughter skipped by, humming, and the librarian waved from her doorstep. It felt like the world had exhaled, as if the mirror's strange pull had finally left. But Lynette knew better. She could still feel the memory of it, the shimmer of wanting, the sharp edge of almost believing she was better than others, the ache of not being enough. And so, she carried the memory carefully, like a pebble in her pocket. Not to hide, but to remember. So she could recognize it the next time a mirror or anything like it tried to tell her who she should be. She never told the villagers what had happened at the tower. Some things, she thought, were meant to be kept quiet and safe, like wildflowers in a secret meadow. But she did tell stories. She wrote and drew and dreamed, not to be praised, but because stories made her heart feel full. And when other children felt small or invisible, Lynette sat beside them and listened. Not to fix them, not to change them, just to let them know they were seen, just as they were. One autumn evening, Bram asked if the mirror had been magic. Lynette looked at the stars above and answered that it had been, but not the kind that made things appear or disappear. It had been the kind of magic that twisted truth, that took what people wished they were and made it feel more real than who they truly were. And that kind of magic, she said, was not good at all. Bram nodded slowly, then asked if another mirror might be hiding somewhere, waiting. Lynette didn't answer right away. She thought about the way reflections followed people everywhere in puddles, spoons, shiny windows. Not magic ones, no, but still, reflections that showed only what eyes could see. Not the kindness someone carried, not the bravery in their quiet choices, not the love in the way they held a hand. So she told Bram that even if another mirror appeared, they'd know what to do, because this time they would remember what the last one had taught them, that no mirror could ever show who a person truly was. Only their heart could do that. Years later, the children in the village still played near the woods, but none ever found the silver stones of the tower again. The path had vanished, overgrown with moss and wild roses. Some said it had never existed, that it was just a tale told on stormy nights. But in one small home near the edge of the forest, a shelf held a plain brown notebook, now full of stories. And beside it, in a frame made of twigs and ribbon, was a simple drawing, a tower, 2 children, and a broken mirror lying in a field of flowers. And on quiet nights, when the wind rustled the trees and the moonlight danced across the floor, Lynette would smile. Because she knew the truth. She had lived it. Moral of the story: true beauty and worth come not from what others see, but from the kindness, honesty, and courage we carry inside ourselves. Even the most magical mirror cannot reflect the heart.